Would you like to be somebody who understands the flaw in modern parenting? Then listen to this entire video where I explain it in depth and the psychology behind parenting and children, the dynamic, and why modern parenting specifically is quite suboptimal in a specific domain, let's say. So before we get into this, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you'd like to learn more about self-development, dating, and how to reduce suffering in life. Let's get into it. Alright, so children are the future output of humanity because they are young now. Eventually they will grow up to be the dominant individuals in society who are creating the output and or molding the state of humanity, let's say. And they grow up to become the protectors of the society. They grow up to become the innovators, and hence the existence and well-being of humanity's future is embodied within these children. It is quite a symbolical thing. Hence, of course, the goal should be to nurture children in a way to become resilient, noble, and truthful individuals. And they should learn ethics and assemble an internal moral compass, because the moral compass will guide them to behave in a way that is beneficial to themselves and the people around them, like their family, friends, and community, in the long term. And that's what I would consider as good. And beneficial, I mean something that, reduces suffering, but also is challenging. So they should encourage a way of life that is truthful, because life is inherently a challenge. So it should be aligned with what is true. Of course, what is true is another whole discussion, but we're not going to go into that now. So the greatest obstacle, and at the same time the solution providers to help children go into these individuals, these good individuals. So the obstacle and the solution provider lies within parents. Parents have an unimaginable effect on children. And I think the majority of a children's suffering stems from the circumstances and situations that the child was exposed to, in its childhood, and these wounds sort of stick with the child for the rest of its life unless they are processed. But at the same time, parents can also teach children an immense amount about life and how to survive in all aspects, really. And so it is not an obvious sort of parents are always good or either bad. It is the quality of parenting lies in a scale between like optimal and suboptimal, let's say. And I think the goal of parenthood really it's quite sort of a dark perspective, but it is to reduce the collateral damage inflicted upon kids, because some sort of damage is almost guaranteed when raising children, and the only freedom parents really have is to reduce the amount of damage. So it's not a question of if, but of how much damage occurs. And the damage occurs because humans are quite limited in their cognitive abilities and physical capacity, especially with low levels of consciousness. Many parents might not understand what effects their behavior have on their own kids. So we're too limited to observe the full bandwidth of effects that our behavior has on anybody really in life. And that's, I would say, sort of the reason why parents automatically create damage on their kids, or inflict damage on their kids. And this is where my critique on modern parenting comes in. Now, when I talk about modern parenting, maybe the definition is quite sort of biased here and not quite right, but what I'm referring to is that the trend of both parents working full-time jobs and hence not having a lot of time to invest and spend time with their kids. And of course, I understand that some parents have no choice but to work full-time jobs because of financial pressure. However, I'm still going to try to give a little bit of an objective evaluation of the effects of less time spent with kids. Now, My critique revolves around the goal that parents need to have the tools necessary to reduce the damage they inflict upon kids. So really the tools are key here. And one key tool to reduce damage is what I call know your kid. In business you have KYCs, know your client, and here it is KYK, know your kid. And as a parent, you are legally obligated to take responsibility for your child, and that means you need to take decisions for your child, which means in order to reduce the damage inflicted, you need to be able to judge which decisions would be best for your kid, and that is the core of it. And you need to know your child well enough to judge what is relatively good for your child. Now, how do you get to understand what is good for your kid? You need to, just like anybody else, spend time with them in order to get to know them well. And how are you supposed to judge what your child's psychological and physical needs are if you don't spend enough time with your kid and literally just don't know your kid well enough? Now, you really can't know what the kid needs, and that is the problem with many parents nowadays, I hypothesize, and they don't spend enough time with their kids in order to responsibly, well, they do take responsibility, I guess, to a degree, but not sort of precisely take the right decisions and judge what is right for the kid in that moment. And here's like a really basic example to sort of explain this and compare this. Let's say you have two friends, friend A and friend B. You've known both friends for 2 years, however, you hang out with friend A twice a week to grab dinner, and you only see friend B once every 3 weeks to play tennis, let's say. And let's say friend A, who you spent more time with, suddenly gets an allergic reaction and you need to call the ambulance and explain what might have caused the reaction. And of course, you know what your friend is allergic against because you have spent a lot of time with them, talked about these topics, sort of allergies, and you know them very well. Hence, you can tell the medics where the allergy stems or what the allergy is, and they can treat your friend then adequately. However, let's say the same situation happens with friend B, who has an allergic reaction, but you don't know what is causing it because you've spent far less time with them and you have never discussed the topic of allergies. That's like a very basic example of how spending more time with somebody allows you to know them better. And really, what is also important here is that for anybody, especially kids, this goes far beyond what is the physical need. The psychological needs are far more complex and hence more difficult to understand, and therefore require much more time to be invested to really grasp what the kid is about, and almost, I would say, potentially more important to take into account as a parent. So children are always growing and changing, and they shift towards maturity on average, I'd say. And you need to be able to estimate where your child is in this trajectory towards maturity, because your child, let's say, might be too shy to go off on for a month to a summer football camp because football might be too aggressive for them, and 1 month is quite a lot of time to be away from parents, and it might be better if the kid goes off to a 2-week outdoors summer camp, which is a lot shorter and maybe more friendly, let's say, or less competitive, let's say. And the 1 month football camp might traumatize your kid and make him or her feel abandoned because, it would be sent away from the parents, and abandonment is sort of one of the greatest fears of any children, and that can leave some deep-rooted damage inflicted, and trust me, you really don't want that. And I can explain from my own experience that I believe my parents spent a lot of time with me, and they sometimes, especially in recent years when I was a teenager and I needed to take sort of important life decisions, that they seemed to know me better than I knew myself sometimes. And that was just because, for example, my mother had spent so much time with me and she really knew my sort of fundamental personality and what would sort of maybe be right for me better than I would know for myself. And hence, in conclusion, parents should spend more time with their children in order to understand their fundamental personalities and what their current needs are, in order to take the adequate decisions for the child and take responsibility for the child, and hence reduce the damage inflicted and set the child out on a trajectory that will reduce suffering and let the child sort of thrive, or support the child in building the tools needed to thrive in life. So that's really important. Spend more time with the kids, and well, how to do that, that would maybe be a new video. Here I'm just mapping out the issue, I believe, that is sort of the case with many modern parents and working full-time jobs each, and hence not having time slots allocated to their kids, or not enough. Yeah. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you'd like to learn more about self-development, dating, and how to reduce suffering in life. That was it. Let's go.